On today's episode of the Fitness Pain Free Show, we're going over programming and periodization basics. This is part 3 on our series on programming and periodization. If you missed part 1 or part 2, I'll leave a link in the show notes in the description. Check those out before you listen to this. Before we get going, I do have a freebie. It's an evidence-based guide to programming and periodization. It's a cheat sheet. You know I love to make these cheat sheets. I've taken all of the most important principles of today's lesson. I put them together in a nice PDF. Give you all the bullet points. This is 100% free. I'll put a link in the show notes in the description. Go ahead and check that out and download it. 100% free. It's going to help you a lot, both as we go through this presentation and later if you want to check back and say, oh, what the heck did Dan say 3 months ago, whenever you need it. Welcome to the Fitness Pain Free Show. This is where we help coaches and clinicians like yourself get your patients out of pain and back in the gym where they belong. So what are optimal rest periods for both strength and hypertrophy? So what am I talking about by rest periods? So largely when you do a set of bench press and you rest 1 minute after that set, does that increase your hypertrophy and strength over doing a set of bench press and then resting 3 minutes and then going back to your second set? Well, Schoenfeld et al. In 2016 found that longer rest periods, so 3 minutes versus shorter rest periods, 1 minute, actually outperformed for strength as well as hypertrophy. Now, I think this was interesting because when I was in school and reading the muscle mags back in the day, if you did short rest periods, high reps, short rest, pump that muscle up as much as you can, that was supposed to lead to more hypertrophy over the course of time. But subsequent research hasn't shown that. Largely, if you rest longer, so in this study, 3 minutes versus 60 seconds, you have greater improvements in not only strength, but also hypertrophy. One of the things that I will do for my athletes to try to increase strength and hypertrophy and being conscious of time, just because folks don't have 2 to 3 hours per day to train, right? If you try to do 3 to 5 minutes rest between every single exercise in the gym, your session quickly becomes, 90, 120, 3 hours long, right? I utilize a lot of supersets. So largely what I end up doing, let's say I'm starting with a bench press, I may superset that with a calf raise. So the reason why this is beneficial is because when you do your bench press, you're really not using your calves very much, right? And when you do a calf raise, you're not using your shoulders and pecs very much. So the calf raise represents a rest period for the shoulders. So by the time you get back to the bench press, you're a little bit more fresh. Plus, since you did the calf raises, you got an exercise out of the way you need to do anyway, but you're more rested and you'll probably get more strength and hypertrophy as a result. Another lost secret of periodization is actually hitting that like button and then subscribing to the channel. If you do that, you're going to get jacked super strong, and it's going to help me out a lot. So I appreciate it if you hit the like and then also subscribe. So what does ideal programming look like to maximize power? First and foremost, maximal strength is correlated with power. So if you're doing strength training and strength training parameters, you're going to be improving your power as a byproduct of that. The second piece is a wide variety of acceptable loads. So you could be working with 30% of your 1 rep max or 80% of your 1 rep max and still make progress. I think specificity comes into play here. Power work for a powerlifter might be dynamic effort work. So somewhere between 50 and 60 and 70% of your 1 rep max perform very, very quickly. For, let's say, a baseball pitcher, maybe doing medicine ball throws, 3 sets of 6 to 8, something along those lines. In those 2 scenarios, you have a very light load and you have a very heavy load. And that's just specific to what the athlete is trying to improve in their sport. The general goal with power training is try to maintain your speed throughout the course of a given set. So largely when you're doing power work, you're not going to failure because when you go to failure, the reps slow down and the quality goes down. So if you're purely working on power, you're probably going to cut that set a little bit short so you can maximize the quality. So generally speaking, we're looking for lighter loads, we're looking for higher speeds, we're looking for non-failure sets. So we're not throwing a med ball against the wall until you can't anymore. We're doing a reasonable amount of sets and repetitions where the quality is very high and we're working on maximal power. Lastly, we're probably looking for a little bit more rest because if we don't rest enough between sets, we start to build fatigue and then our power goes down. So how do we optimize exercise order for our patients? So first and foremost, from a strength perspective, the first exercise you do is going to get the greatest benefit in strength, right? So if you do leg extensions, so quad extensions on a machine, followed up with squats, and you compare that to someone who squats first and then does knee extensions afterward, The knee extension first group has a greater improvement in knee extensions. The squat first group has a greater improvement in squat strength. From a hypertrophy standpoint, it doesn't seem to matter. So if I'm looking at growth of the quads and I squat first versus doing leg extensions first, right? Or I flip it and I do my leg extensions and then I squat, it seems like at the end of the day, you have the same amount of hypertrophy. So at least in my mind, it makes sense. You put the strength exercises first, and then you can put the hypertrophy exercises afterwards because order doesn't seem to matter. I also am a big fan of incorporating power and skill work prior to doing my strength and hypertrophy work. Now, why is this? Well, when we're doing power work or skill work, we're not going to failure. So the amount of fatigue is not very high. And generally speaking, when you do a bunch of skill and or power work, it doesn't take away from the strength work that follows. The other piece is that if you're doing a lot of power work prior to doing your strength work, you may improve the amount of strength that you have via post-activation potentiation or PAP. That's just a fancy way of saying that if you try to move very, very quickly, you prime the system so you might be a little bit stronger during your heavier strength sets. So how about endurance? If I'm putting conditioning or endurance work into my strengthening program, how is it going to affect my outcome? Well, if you put the two together in a single program, and it doesn't seem to matter too much what the order is. So if you do conditioning and then you do strength afterwards, or if you do strength and you do conditioning, generally speaking, you're not going to have as good of improvement in your strength than if you did just strength alone, okay? However, if you split your endurance or conditioning work around 3 hours apart from your strength work, that attenuates that effect. So largely, if you're going to give your athlete a lot of conditioning, it makes sense. Do it later in the day, do it in the morning, do it on an off day. It doesn't seem to matter if you do your conditioning 3 hours before or 3 hours afterwards. You still have the same improvements in strength. It's just important that we split these things apart a little bit. So guys, if you like what you're learning about so far, then I want you to go and check out the Fitness Pain-Free Mini Course. So I made a mini course. It's absolutely free. That's the next logical step if you want to learn more from me. So in the course, we go over 5 lessons. That first lesson is how traditional schooling has failed us, right? So schooling is phenomenal from a physical therapy perspective, but doesn't really teach you how to work with high-level athletes in the fitness world, right? Doesn't always teach you how to do the lifts appropriately. Doesn't teach you about progressions and regressions of common lifts within the gym. Doesn't teach you how to program normally, how to write rehab programs, or how to write injury prevention programs for these folks. Next thing we go over, 7 reasons why people get hurt in the gym, 4 simple steps to getting your clients out of pain, how to build the career of your dreams and earn the respect of your community. It's all well and good if you know exactly how to work with folks within the gym. But if you can't get these folks through the door on a regular basis, then you're simply not going to be living the dream that you want to because you can't get the patients through the door that you want to work with. Okay, so I'll show you how to do that. And lastly, we'll talk a little bit about the Fitness Pain-Free certification, right? So I'll leave a link in the show notes. I definitely recommend checking this out. Once you sign up for the Fitness Pain-Free Mini Course, you will be automatically placed in the waitlist for the Fitness Pain-Free certification. Now, the Fitness Pain-Free certification is the course, the certification that I wish I had as a new grad that fills in all the gaps in knowledge that you don't get in physical therapy school. So A, you'll gain complete confidence working with injuries in the strength and fitness world. You'll learn optimal technique for both health and performance from myself and some of the best coaches in the world. You'll master programming for rehabilitation and injury prevention. Have fun while earning a whole bunch of physical therapy and physical therapy assistant credits. You have 31.5 of those. You'll also gain NSCA credits as well as CrossFit credits if you need those. This is the equivalent of a university education in working with injuries in the weight room. I really believe that. I've been adding to this thing over the past 5 or 6 years. It's massive, a ton of phenomenal information. And lastly, the biggest goal is just to fill your day with the patients you love working with and building the respect and admiration of the communities you love working with. So I'll leave a link in the show notes. Sign up for the Fitness Pain-Free Mini Course. The certification is open 4 times per year for 1 week to enroll into. If you're on the wait list by signing up for the Fitness Pain-Free Mini Course, I'll alert you when that next enrollment period is open and you can get started. Let's get back to the show now. So what the heck is periodization? Periodization defines manipulating training variables in a cyclical, nonlinear manner through specific fitness phases. So largely over the course of time, when you're working with a patient, you change the parameters a little bit. So that might be the intensity. That might be the volume. Maybe start to incorporate a little more power, a little more endurance. So things change slightly over the course of time. Now, why the heck would you do this? because we have quite a bit of research to show that a periodized program is going to lead to more strength and hypertrophy compared to a non-periodized program. So it makes sense we should learn how to do this. So I think that periodization can get very, very confusing, but it doesn't have to be. So I want to go over two very simple forms of periodization you can very immediately put into your patient's program. The first is linear periodization. So largely in linear periodization, you're moving from training with a lot of volume and low intensity, and over the course of time, it flips. So you start to increase the intensity and decrease the volume, right? And if you do this, you get better a little faster than if you just kept it the same every single month, right? Let's say you have a patient that has patellofemoral pain and you're going to utilize a squat to get them out of pain, and you want to periodize their program because your athlete actually wants to get stronger with squatting, right? So great exercise to use. Early on, after they hurt themselves, they can't tolerate heavy loads, but light loads they might be able to tolerate really well. Well, this works out great for linear periodization. Why? Because usually you're starting with lower loads, low intensity, and doing higher volume, which it seems like this patient is able to handle. So let's say on the first month, when they squat once a week, they do 3 sets of 10. Then on month 2, they're doing 3 sets of 8. So what do? We just increase the intensity slightly and drop the volume. Let's say month 3 rolls around, they do 4 sets of 6. Again, we're just ratcheting down the volume, increasing the intensity. And maybe on your final month, you do 4 sets of 5. At that point, patient's feeling pretty good. They feel like they can continue slowly increasing the load over the course of time. You've gotten them out of knee pain and you've gotten them stronger, and you maximize your outcome because you use linear periodization. Simple, right? What the heck is undulating periodization? Undulating periodization is frequent variations in volume and intensity that occur daily or weekly, right? So unlike linear periodization, where you're changing things a little less frequently, undulating periodization, you change it pretty dang often, right? So here's an example below. Let's use the same back squat example. So let's say week 1, you have your patient doing 3 sets of 10. Week 2, 4 sets of 8. Week 3, 3 sets of 12. And week 4, 4 sets of 6. Now, I'm actually a big fan of undulating periodization. I use it all the time with my athletes. It's just that sometimes it's not the best periodization strategy for folks because there's so much change, especially with intensity, right? So let's say you're starting with 3 sets of 12, and the next week you're down to 4 sets of 6, right? You undulate it. That's going to lead to better gains. However, you also spike that intensity. If someone has a lot of knee pain, they might not be able to handle that. So the linear periodization works a little better in that instance, but for folks that aren't that irritable, or you're trying to prescribe accessory programs that aren't really irritating the injury, then feel free to undulate those things. So now you know how to periodize for an athlete that has low back pain, but you still don't know the good exercises to get them out of pain. However, I have a really nice video that's going to show you exactly how to do that. So I want you to go ahead and click a link. I think it's in that corner over there, and you can go over 5 great exercises for low back pain. I'll see you on that video. If you guys want to check out the references, I know you can't see them right now. They're too tiny. I really delved through the literature on this one. I'm a nerd about this stuff. I love it. If you want to check those out, again, link in the show notes, all right, in the description. Check those out. Leave a comment. If you think any of these studies are stupid, great. Let me know. I want to hear it. And again, thank you so much for your support. It's truly folks like you that allow me to do what I love for a living. I really mean that. It's so cool that I get to learn and share and grow as a physical therapist, share the information for you. And because of that, I can support my own career. Awesome. If you want to go that extra step and really support me, hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. It helps with the algorithm. If you're listening to the podcast version of this, please consider leaving a 5-star review because the podcast is amazing. Plus, it also helps me out tremendously. If you want to take your learning to the next level, I recommend subscribing to Fitness Pain-Free Insiders. It is an online library for strength and fitness professionals who want to master working with injuries in the gym. All this information is updated by me every month for the past 5 years ago. You get started for just $1. Great information. Definitely go check it out.